So far, this area is devoid of any monsters. Helen felt a similar reaction to Sue, who seemed the most bothered by what they found. It had been close to an hour since they began scouting ahead of the group. They were hoping to learn more about this level and potentially discover a way out of the underground prison they found themselves in. Though Helen enjoyed the peaceful demeanor of the natural beauty held by everything, it raised her hackles at the same time. Something about it felt sinister, as though things would quickly devolve as the shit hit the fan. She often caught herself gripping her sword as though the weapon was a talisman against the world around them. Should we go back? Synth's body language was fluid like a leopard, confident in her ability to inflict danger to her opponent. Unlike the rest of them, she was an Amazonian ready to take on any threats. I feel as though we'd have encountered something already if it existed. Katharina shook her head. This place doesn't feel right. It's too peaceful. She was silent as she gazed at several deers grazing, one of the creatures raising its head and looking in their direction. Before we head back, I want some kind of intel we can give to the squad leader. I think that will be the best course of action. Waving a hand, I feel the same, but we haven't seen anything. What are we supposed to gather and bring back? Sue sounded annoyed, turning to May. Are you able to get a feel for something? Helen's eyes followed each of the women, not comfortable with adding her own thoughts in the conversation. As she looked at the tiny blonde, it was apparent the woman had plenty of experience in combat. Though she didn't have Synth's naturally predatory aura, it was clear that May had just as much experience with how she was able to hold back her emotions. I agree with Katharina. If we were to head back now, I feel as though we'd be setting ourselves to be slaughtered. Frowning. It's like something is on the tip of my tongue. Helen turned her head to observe their surroundings again, wanting to be of help as they continued searching the area. She jerked back when she saw all the deers were now staring at them. Previously, it had only been the one, but now, all of them had stopped. That's a bit creepy. Helen spoke under her breath. What's creepy? May immediately asked, whipping her head towards Helen. Feeling her face get hot in embarrassment, she addressed May, pointing back at the animals. Those things. When I checked on them, again, they... May pulled out her daggers, her brows furrowing in suspicion. What's up, May? Synth sensed the growing unease in her comrade. Her eyes turned to look where May was gazing, noticing the unusual behavior of the animals. Her hand smoothly pulled out her sword. Seeing everyone getting ready, she looked back at the deer and to the women, not knowing what was happening. Aren't they just animals? Helen couldn't help herself, regretting the words as soon as they left her mouth. If we were back on our world, then it wouldn't be an issue. But we're not. May didn't take her eyes away from the creatures, taking up a fighting stance as though ready to engage a threat. Helen, I think May is right. Katharina chimed in, sounding equally suspicious. When Helen faced Katharina, she realized Katharina wasn't facing the same direction as May and Synth. Following the direction Katharina was facing, Helen soon saw the dozens of wolves calmly looking at them. The way they just watched them was unnerving, making Helen slide out her own weapon. What sealed the deal for her were a couple of rabbits next to the wolves. They just sat calmly next to the predators, staring at their group. What's the plan? Synth asked the group. Let's allow them to make the first move. I don't enjoy the idea of engaging an enemy we have no knowledge about. May didn't take her eyes off of the deers. With the added numbers behind me, I get the sense things are going to begin soon, whether we're ready or not. Her grip on her daggers tightened. Agreed. These things are not force animals from our world. They're concealing intelligence beyond the things they're mimicking. Sue observed for any additional threats beyond the two groups, her spear's tip matching her eye movement. Stay close to me, Helen. Katharina urged, her feet slid across the dirt in an attempt to maintain her stance. Staring at the wolves, Helen wondered what the creatures were waiting for. A slight movement made her eyes twitch to check out the source. Her eyes widened upon the sight of one of the rabbits jerking about as it stood there. A slight buzz and whine were heard. What the? Synth quickly looked back and observed the bizarre movements of the tiny creature. A low hiss made Helen look back behind her to observe the deers. Just like the rabbit, the one that had stared initially at them moved about jerkily. It was as though the thing was experiencing a seizure. The sounds being generated by the things slowly grew in intensity. The skin on the deer's face flayed open to reveal its skull, along with several tentacles squirming about. Continuing to shudder, it stood on its rear legs as though it were a person. Helen couldn't tear her eyes off of the thing, horrified by what she saw. As though something was growing from inside, legs exploded out of the creature, the feet dripping a viscous fluid. At the end of each toe was a curved claw. Cutting into the earth, it shifted its weight onto the thicker legs, the original dangling in the air. It wasn't long until arms as thick as trunks burst out of the chest. Soon, they were staring at a massive monster with a head like a deer, including a sizable rack and hairy body similar to a wolf. Fuck me, Synth growled as she looked at something twice her size. Understanding the sentiment, Helen looked back at the wolves, seeing a creature similar to what the deer had turned into. The difference was the absence of the rack on its head. It was standing close to where the rabbit had initially been. Even worse was how the other animals were now shuddering, their ears invaded with the buzzing and hissing. Get ready, Katharina voiced to the others, looking grim about their position. Don't engage until they reach us. Watch each other's backs. At least our feelings weren't unfounded, Sue chuckled, relieving some of the tension. Groaning at the joke, I would have preferred to be paranoid instead of right, May dryly replied. At least, we won't be bored. Helen felt the ends of her lips curling up into a grin, surprised at her ability to find the moment amusing. Deep down, she knew that getting through this battle would allow her to grow as a person. Ignoring the magical properties of the world they found themselves, Helen was startled to find herself looking forward to the transformation. The former deer fell forward onto its two hands and began charging towards their group. Flung into the air were clumps of dirt from the force of its rampage. Come, I'll show you how big of a mistake you made, Synth shouted at the thing. Raising the pommel close to her face with the tip of the sword aimed at the creatures, she jumped to the side and swung her weapon. A long gash blossomed on its side, a dark mucus pouring out of it. As it turned to face Synth, it revealed its back to May. Running towards it, May launched herself into the air and landed just beneath the neck on its back. Driving both daggers close to the spine, she gouged out long trails into the flesh. It wasn't long before a section of tissue was cut out with surgical precision. Before it could respond, May somersaulted off the monster and landed several feet away. The thing cried out in pain, looking to find the person responsible. Though its face was only a skull, the thing was driven mad by its wounds. Let's get this over with soon. I get the feeling its friends are going to want to join in on this dance. Katharina ran towards the thing. Not wanting to be left behind, Helen followed close.